So, it all starts with 3D Max. We will do, or rather we have a scene, a model in 3D Max. Now I will reveal all the superfluous, so that nothing gets in the way. So, I have a scene like this. The scene you saw in the announcement. This is a simple interior with panoramic windows, a modern interior. There is such a Christmas tree, a TV zone, a fireplace, well, as if such a living room kitchen. Very elaborate interior. I will tell you now in more detail how it is made. First of all, we use a sphere for the background in Andrel. I talked about it once in the lessons on the channel. A sphere is being created. Usually I create it in 3D Max, but it is possible to create it in Unreal. It doesn't matter what size it will be, it can be any size, then we will increase it in Unreal, if we need to either decrease it. Its segments are not important to us either. In principle, it can be so angular. Here we convert all the polygons into the title of pane, and select all the polygons of control and flip, that is. We wrap the polygons inside, because we have the interior inside, and the background will play the role of the background. More precisely, the interior is located inside the ball, and the ball is like a background for us, so that when we walk around the interior, if we have a penetration, or from any angles in the interior, we have the right background from all angles of view, as it were. Next, how is our interior made? The interior is made into one polygon. Here it is. As we see the inner part, or rather the outside, we see what's inside, and inside we seem to see already the armel of the polygon. In Unreal, it is impossible to transfer the interior in this way, because the polygon will not let in. Or rather it will let in light with its reverse side, because it can block the light only with the front side. Therefore, we need to create a so-called shell. This is such an additional box. His polygons are already looking outside, at the street. And it turns out that the light will fall on this shell, and it will block it, as it were, and we will not have spots, unnecessary gaps. This applies to both Lumen and baking. They have one problem, that is, that there are often leaks in the interiors, so a shell is made. Sometimes even it does not help, an additional shell is made in the basement. Well, that's another topic mostly. The shell is in 3D Max, it's enough. Then there is one point that should be taken into account about the Lumen. Here I have divided the objects into parts, that is, I have a wall, this one, for example, is not a single hole. I have a separate fireplace here, this wall goes separately. Behind the kitchen. Now I'm going to hide the kitchen, furniture. Here is this wall I have separately. Roof, ceiling. It is desirable that I would also divide the ceiling into two parts. Well, I did not divide it here anymore. I think it is not critical. And the ceiling probably isn't very big, but in general it would probably be nice to divide it into at least two parts. For Lumen, I also share large objects, since he works with them better. Here the principle is not the same as that of baking. There is no need to divide too finely. Here we just conditionally do not make two large objects entirely. Then transfer. It's idle now. Now I will hide everything superfluous. So, we transfer the interior of the FBX format. I'm just highlighting everything right now, or controlling the whole scene. And, by the way, we name all the objects with a postscript. See, for this we select objects, let's say, that we need to rename. We can choose objects like this. Let's say we have a lot of them. We have selected objects, we enter the tools. There is a rename project here, we specify the base name here, the prefix cm, which I was talking about, is a static mesh. But if we have a lot of them, then we will number them, so we check the box on, indicate the base set. This is like a reference point for us. He will count from 0, either from 1 or from 2, which you specify here, and click on Rename. It renames. This will facilitate the search in the future with the mouse etiquette in the outliner in the calendar, or in the content browser. Then, when we have selected all the objects, export them to £X, select Export, Export Select. So here we choose a folder. Let's say I create a folder here, let's call it something. Safe. And I put the smooth groups here so that the turbosmooth smoothing groups are taken into account. In principle, you leave the same ticks as I have. Our units should be centimeters. I didn't say this at the beginning, Andrew works in centimeters. And click on OK. It is better to transfer objects individually, that is, as they are sorted by layers, so, first of all, it is faster to transfer them, and secondly, it will be more convenient to sort them later in the content browser in the ANRL. So, I have already moved all the objects, I just moved them with a bunch now. It was probably necessary to do it in layers, so it would be more correct. Well, as a demonstration, I just transferred everything completely now. So, I already have a project open, but I'm going to simulate the situation now, as if you have a new project. Let's say I make a new folder. First of all, we create an empty level, right-click level, call it something. Opening it. Here he asks to save the one that we have already opened. I'll hit the save. This is how we opened this level, which we have now created. It's dark here now, there's nothing here, so it's dark here. Let's move the geometry now, create a folder. So, geometry, and we are looking for what I transferred. So, I moved objects to folder BX1. We get such a single file, we transfer it to the geometry folder, then check the boxes here in the window like mine. Generate Masika lick, we remove, we do not need a collision. We are removing the light maps UVista, and we are also removing the mesh harvester. So, here is the import of the text, then we remove, and put the Dawn crate material. We don't need to create the material. And click on Import All. I have a lot of objects in the scene right now. I probably had to divide them into several layers, folders, because Andre can fly out. I'm lucky now that it didn't crash, but in fact it happens more often that it crashes with a large number of objects. There is also a Christmas tree here. There are a lot of polygons, and when we import it, I immediately save. Because the drill again can fly out at any moment. Great. Now let's move all the objects. Click on Control. Well, in this case, I remove everything, transfer it to the darkness, to the viewport. We are waiting a little, not in a hurry. Geometry appears. In order to sort of see it normally, they are like this selection. Here in lit mode, we change to unlit. In this case, we do not process reflections, light is not processed, we only see geometry. Great. And we expose it. I'll put it up here. All by zeros. By 10, Y and Z. Yes, we set everything to zeros in order to center how in 3D Max we have a scene. So, now let's move on to the lighting stage. Yes, because we have already imported the geometry, now we need to adjust the lighting. First of all, we create here on the plus sign. Let's create it. So, let's create a skylight first. In the light skylight section, I'm transferring to skylight, switching to lit mode. So, at skylight, we will switch to the oval mode, because we are currently working with Lumen. I forgot to say that before you configure something further, it's better to first go to the project settings. And here are some project settings. This should have been done right away when we created the project. So, first of all, in the MEPS mode, more precisely in the MEPS and MOS section. Here we set the level that we have created in these two slots in two slots. In this case, General. Here we can choose it by the way, save it. So we choose it and put it here with an arrow. That's it. It turns out that when we start the engine, we will start this level immediately. Next, what do we need to configure? We need to adjust some parameters. We need to enable ray tracing. We enter the rate racing in the search. We find the support hardware rate rating here, and we tick all these boxes here. In principle, you don't have to put stress on it if you don't need it, but usually these are all the ticks included. Further on optimization, we turn off to more checkboxes. In the future, they will interfere with us. The first is streaming. Streaming. Here is the streaming text. Here you will have a tick, we remove it. Most likely, Unreal will ask to restart the project. We will definitely restart it later. And before restarting, you will need to disable one more check mark. This is virtual text. Here we will have a few ticks. All of them need to be disabled, or you can basically disable the topmost neural virtual text port. That is, in principle, support for virtual texts. This is optimization from Unreal, and restart the engine. In principle, these are all basic settings that we will need to do at the very beginning. So, I moved Sky, but he doesn't give much light right now. Let's add another post-process. To adjust the exposure to the virtual visa effect, we add a post-process of wool. Now here, let's set it up right away as a post-process. In the tool search, I will find global illumination. In global illumination, we insert global lighting. In this case, the method we have is Lumen. We are working today in Lumen, we are leaving Lumen. Next, we are still making surface settings, then we will return to the post process. Then we have the settings to, or rather we write reflection to, the Lumen method, we leave it. So, now let's set up the exposure. I enter Expo, already here I put 3 ticks, I remove the automatic method, I put manual. So the physical exposure is this one, I'm removing the tick. So let's try. So let there be one exposure compression for now, and let's set up the skylight. And, by the way, I forgot, in the post-process it now works only within the framework of boxing. In order for it to work outside of the box, that is, in the entire scene, we also enter an infinite in the search. And turn on the infinite extension checkmark. Check the box here. Now the post-process works for the entire scene. Here I am changing the exposure now. Now there is no special effect, because most likely the skylight is not configured. Let's set up the skylight. Here I have it selected here. In Kiba MEP, or rather in source type, I will put up a Kiba MEP. In order to be able to use Kiba Map, that is, this is our HD Paradise. I will use HD Paradise, I already have one for that. Now I'm going to choose H-Fight. In my opinion, this one is not bad. I chose HD Paradise and insert it with an arrow. Great. We are her work. Just a second. I have something with the mouse. So, now the exposure that we will change the post in the process, it already affects the scene, because we already have light. The light we have comes from the cube MEP, and the cube MEP is HD Rekha. And earlier, when we had this capture stand standing here, he was capturing, that is, he took light from the environment. And our environment is black, that is, there is no light, so it was dark. Now we have exposed KibaMep HD Rekha, and we have a light. So, here I'm going to put one from the position 4 now. Immediately in the post-process, I'm looking for a Tools bloom. Let's turn off the bloom. I'll set the intensity to 0 so that it doesn't interfere. Slightly increase the intensity of the sky. So, and one more point that I forgot about. Why does our light not get into the interior? Because we have an object, there is glass here, and glass does not pass well, since objects do not pass light into aluminum. We can't even have an object if we uncheck cast shade now, that is, I have highlighted glass now. And in the search I mean cast shade, as is usually done when baking. Cast shadow doesn't work here. Here we have to apply the transparency material. So, while we're not going to disassemble it now, we'll sort it out a little later. Now we're going to work with the light. So, let's say this is the material. So I applied it and the light already gets on the sofa, it already penetrates inside. I'm going to do the same thing with this glass now. Yes, the light is already penetrating. So, and usually the lighting setting is done on gray material. You can create a simple gray material. Now I'll show you how to do it. Let's say we right-click the material, enter M on the keyboard, right, let's say gray the material, open it. I press 3 on the keyboard. I press the left mouse button with the 3 on the keyboard. A node is created in which we set the color. I set, for example, let it be 06. OK. In principle, you cannot do anything else, we got a gray material like this. If someone has set up lighting in 3D Max, he understands why it is necessary. So, now we have just dark material, this one is in a cage, and therefore we see light, we see unreliable light. A lot depends on the material. If we have a light material, then there will be more light on the objects, more precisely in the interior. Now we select all objects. So, as I said, you need to name the objects correctly. Enter C now, let's say CM, underlining. Now I select all the objects, open the element 0. I don't touch the glass here, and here I insert a material, a gray material, into this ball. So, we can already see that there is more light. Now I'm going to try to put another one in the element. So, element 1, element 2, that's about it. So, for some reason, I had two ceilings superimposed. Great. Now you can see how the light is looming. So, and immediately about the reflections. We see now what kind of reflection is here. It still usually disappears. In order to make it normal, again we go into the post process, into reflection, enter reflection in the search. There is such a high value check mark here, we turn it on, and then the rate rating is involved. The one that we included in the project settings, it will, as it were, help Lumen calculate the reflection. We kind of roughly did the lighting. Now we will set it up again. Let's make a background now. The background is also geometry. Since we moved the geometry, I will move the background now. About that ball that I was talking about, now it will need to be moved. I have it here, we transfer it to the scene. Here I click on this button in the corner, we have such viewports, and I put it so, I put the ball. So that it was like the interior was in the center. So, here I put a lock on the scale, and let's increase it. Somewhere 3 will probably be enough. I'll lower it down a little. That is, I usually put the beer on the floor like this. The beer is in the center of the ball, and I center the beer to the floor, Then I switch to the top mode. In the top mode, I also align the center of the interior, expand it to the upward. Now let's assign material to it, because now it's dark inside, we can't see the interior. The material I have here is already ready. I will also explain it later how it is created. If you need this texture starting, Then I can send it to you in a telegram. You can just write in the chat, I'll send it. Here we get this kind of background. So, and now there is such a problem, that there is a reflection when approaching. There is no overcoming them. To fix this, you can select the glass, enter the priorities in the search. And I put priority 1 here. Great, problem solved. Now the reflections do not disappear. Everything works fine. It's the same with glass here. We prioritize the object. Great. So, now we need to add a little bit. I think like this blue shade here, I just take sky, and there is a light color, that is, we can sort of mix the color. We put some color here, well, to taste, we put some such color to simulate the night. It takes a long time to play. Now let's try to adjust the reflection on the ceiling. This is set up by the sky. In principle, just like in 3D Max, we set up sky, it has such a reflection from the ground to the ceiling. Reflected light. We are looking for a low in the search or just enter it. There is a check mark here, this means that we have the color parameter enabled. If the tick is not worth it, then it will work as if HD Paradise, we put a tick, and I will try to put it here, for example. In this case we have a night, and we do not set the values too large. I think that 1 and 5, I don't know, 1 and 2, will probably be enough, so that it's not too bright. And there's not a very suitable HD Paradise here. I'm going to put another one on now. So, and that this one is starting to rip off, it should be. We put it on. So, no, that's not it. This is HD Paradise. Yes, this is what HD Paradise should be. Here we will put a little saturated blue, some more saturated. So, and I'll make it a little brighter. One and 5, for example. We'll set up a chemical joint venture. Let's try to put it. Is that so? So that the reflection from the ceiling fills the interior with light. We are making such an artificial reflection, as it were. I'll make it a little more blue. Something like that. You can increase the brightness, you can somehow balance with the exposure. Choose a post-process. Now I'm going to make him a little more comfortable. And you can somehow see here what is more suitable for us. So this is about how it turns out for us. Great. We will not delay with the light. In principle, we have compiled this kind of lighting with a background. So, what do we have now? Now let's look at the materials. We save the project, because everything needs to be saved. Let's start probably. Oh no, wait, we haven't set up the interior lighting. We need to set up the interior lighting quickly. Creating a plus sign, lights. Here we choose spotlight. Let's say we set up the lighting on these hanging lamps, as it were. Now, it's not necessary to do a lot of them right here, how many of them there are. You just need to make sure that we have the surface of the island illuminated. So about here. And I'll put another one somewhere here. Now we need to configure them. First of all, I put them mobile, so they work correctly. The value here is set to 1, now the value is too big. It is more convenient for me to adjust through temperature, not through color, but it is possible through color. There is a light color here, you can also choose the glow color that we need. We're going to adjust it through the temperature now. I'll put up 4200. Let's say it's 4200. So, now let's set up this cone here. So, this is our internal one. I'll probably put an outer cone. Yes, I'll put up 60. Great. And I'll set up these shadows here. Now they go too sharp like that. I will set the value in the source radius a little more to make them softer. The more light source we have, the softer our shadows are. I think 10 will be enough. And do not forget that in Lumen, if we have a large amount of lighting, we will get a lot of FPS drop. If we have a sinking, we need to take into account. So, here somehow, the light falls on the lamp, so I lower it a little lower. Great. Well, in terms of brightness, here you already see for yourself, as you like it better. I, for example, will put 0.75. Great. We highlighted the island. We also highlight the kitchen area, create a plus light, here we create a rect light. Now I can't see the rectangle, because I have to press the hotkey G. This is our Russian P to see, as it were, the icons of objects. We need to set it up. Source vista is our width, source lens is the length. Now I'm going to make such a thin line, like a LED backlight. 5. Since 20 is the size of the petals, I'll put 0.4 now, let it be 0. Then the length is 120, so I'll make it a little more authentic. I'll have 130. Now they are very bright. I will put 1, even 0.5, and I will also set the glow color in temperatures of 4-200. And I see that you need to increase them a little. Let's put 140 somewhere, then I'll put 155 everywhere. Which was prettier? Well, the brightness can be lowered 0.5, we have 0.02. We put the move. I forgot to put the corner mo. And that's about how we do it. You can even lower the brightness a little more. Yes, I'll put 0.1. 0. 0.2. So, here we have these spots that can be lit with materials. There are self-luminous materials. In principle, we can create them now. This is very simply done. So, where do I have here? We create a material. I call it M. This is the material of the abbreviation, and I write an emissive name. Issue to spot. Opening the material. And I press 3 on the keyboard. With the left mouse button, I create a node and connect it to the emissive color. Here I will set the default color to be white, 1. So, save. So, and I forgot, it was necessary to convert the parameter with the right button. Call color, save, close. Now I will make an instance of this material. Glues the instance material. I call him MAI. Spot is emissive, and I put this material on these spots here. In general, there will be a bloom effect here. If we turn it on in the post-process, it will look prettier. If we need to make it brighter, then we open the instance that we have created now and double-click this window in color. Here's where we have a unit, we set the power. For example, here we see that I have now increased the brightness, but if we need, and increases the bloom effects. So, the same thing happens with the Christmas tree. Now I will be able, I hope, to highlight this garland. Yes, here. To make more light, you can add fake lighting here. We add plus lights, I add rect light. You can highlight something locally, you can, in principle, add more light. I'll add, for example, 2. I'm doing more. So, let's make the color the same blue. I will transfer it to Muva was. Let's do, I don't know, 4. I have 4 a lot. Let 2 remain. Now, if I turn it off now, what do we get? So, we need to direct him, probably. So, let's try to make more light. I will make an insti scale for 1.5, and you can turn the HD Rekha a little. To do this, in Sky, in the Sorsky VMP angle, we insert an angle firm which there will be a glow firm the here and more. So, let's try to put some such. So I'll add a little light, probably. I will try to make a little more reflected light through Themis. Let's see what happens. Even when we apply the materials, in principle, a lot of things change. We have walls, if we have light walls, then we will have a lighter interior. This also needs to be taken into account, so the gray material needs to be customized for the materials that we will have. Approximately, if we have light materials, the gray material should be lighter. So I'm going to try to turn off the cast sheds at the windows now. That is, shadows. I choose glass, I write in the search for cast sheds. Yeah, great. The light has become large. Here then, I also remove the cashier's shadow from this glass, so that the glass does not interfere with the passage of light in any way. I'm going to try to turn off this rectangle now. Let's see what we have without it. Okay, not bad, but it's still better with him. I'll put 1. I'll turn a little towards the Christmas tree. So you can adjust its size. So, we still have a curtain here. It turns out to be such a shadow, but in principle, we have set up such a light. So, what else do we have here? Fire, we will have materials. I will tell you about them a little later. What's next for us? Then we have the materials. Materials can be taken from quicksand. So, here I'm going to remove the grid now. Click on the show, and remove the grit here. There is a grit check mark here. I took the floor material from the K bridge. We go into the plus sign here, there is a quick bridge. The built-in library in Andri Lenzen is now loading for me. So, what I downloaded here. Now let's see what Megascans. Here you can upload different materials. Just go to the home. For example, I go 3 times. So, all face. Here we can choose any section that we need. Basically, for example, if we need parquet, click on wood, and here we select, for example, parquet. We get a heart in favorites and add what we downloaded from us with a tick. Click on the object. Let's say I have a downloaded hake. When we remove the hake, we have it down here. Click on the ed, sometimes not the first time, from the second, the catalog opens, where we have this material. So, I have the material lying. In principle, it seems here it is. You can remember Ven Flow, this is the floor material. So in my opinion, I was rocking da hairs Khalidi. I press it like this, did he open for me or not? Yes, that's him. So we can just throw it on the floor like this with a transfer. That's it. Next, how to edit these materials. I choose, for example, the floor, I choose the material, and here I have the following parameters: talling by x, by y. We can change the offset value by x by y here. Next, what do we have? Ration, we can turn around. The turn here is at 0.25. 90 degrees is a 0.25 turn. Next here, we have the setup of the albedo. Basically, the albedo here is adjusted by the second point contrast. We insert it here. If we need saturation, we set the brightness. Again, we adjust to the project. There is such a need here. Contrast. In principle, these are the main parameters that we change. If we want to change the texture, we can change it here. In general, in principle, I would not advise changing this material, which opens here initially. It is better, of course, to make an instance from it. Right-click, the instance warms the material, give it a name. You can even change the texture here, somehow adjust it as needed. The original material will remain as it is. So, Elite. So, basically, I took only the floor from the Cox Bridge in my opinion. Now I'm going to tell you about glass, how glass is created. More precisely, how I made it. Glass material. This is a simple material that we create with the right button material. We create ordinary material like this with such a node. We just connect color to it. This node is created if you hold down the 3 key, the number 3, and press the left mouse button. We create such a node, we connect it with base color. This is a hyphen for us. The color should be set to white. Metallic. These nodes are created very simply. Right-click on metallic and remove the promoter parameter, and this node is created automatically. Setting up metallic. Metallic 1 is our completely metallic object. The material fully reflects like metal. Specie is a reflection, the maximum value of 1. Here we have a constant, that is, it cannot be changed in the instance. What is displayed here will stand in the material. Such a constant is created if you hold down the 1 key on the keyboard, and with the left mouse button, we create a constant. Rawness is roughness, that is, an analog of glossiness. 0 is completely glossy, 1 is completely matte. In the channel about the liability, I don't know right away whether it will be or not, so that it appears, we select this node here. And here we set the translus mod to pale, we set the translus here. By default, there is the first parameter of the package. We need to set the translus. Thus, the object, or rather the material, will understand that transparency is transmitted here. In refraction, I set the unit so that the reflection rate rating works correctly. LUR, you cannot use LURP. You can simply connect a parameter of the rawness type to the danger. That is, right-click the promoter parameter. Here is the value 0, it's completely transparent, or like yes, completely transparent material. Let's say we put 1, completely opaque. We are putting now, for example, 0, 1 or 0, 3. So, I'm betting 0, 3 now. Here it turns out too, like glass. Now it's not shown here with reflections, but in the scene it will be with reflections. You need to look there, adjust with the scene. Open the viewport and see what the material looks like. It's better to do this with an instance, so here we just insert nodes, configure the material, save it, make an instance. Overlay it on an object and see how it works for us. LURP is a node that simulates a mix. Here we mix channel A, channel B by Fresnel. The Fresnel is created with the right button, here we enter the Fresnel. Here is a Fresnel such a node. In exponents, well, in short, we connect a node to the first channel, which will control, as it were, the degree of transition. How smoothly it is, how smoothly it will transition from opacity, that is the front, that is. This is what we look at 90 degrees. And the sight is what we look at from an angle, that is, what we see from an obtuse angle, and what we see from an acute angle. At an acute angle, we will have a more glossy one, there will be more reflections, less transparent, or vice versa. That is, as you need. We save and, as I said, right-click the instance material, create an instance, put it on some object. And when we change the parameters, here we turn them on, which we had there in the material. So, for example, here we put glass on this. And I adjust, for example, metallicity. If I clean it up now, if it's not visible. So, it looks like my material didn't overlap. Yes, but if I remove metallicity, then reflections disappear. I set the metallicity to the maximum, reflections appear. I put the Fresnel on 0, it doesn't work for us. I put it back on 5, we already have a different reflection working. The strength of the reflection depends on the angle of our view. And we adjust the viewing angles through the front and the sight. So, it's about the glass. Basically, all materials are made through an instance in the scene. I'm going to show it now. We are not going to apply materials everywhere right now because it will take a very long time. I'm going to show you on the stage where these materials are superimposed. Smaller. So yes, it's already better now. Slightly lowered the quality settings and it got better. We need to be saved. So, the materials are all made according to that principle, that is, we create, or rather I create one universal material. And already from it I make some other materials. I have this material, now I'll show you where I have it, factories. I started with fabric. The structure here seems to be very complex, but in principle, it is possible to create a lot of materials from it. Now I will try to explain what is here. So, this is our scheme of UV diffuse, as it is written here. Here we manage the UV map, UV offset, the talling of the diffuse. Then we have a diffuse here. Here we can use as just a color in the diffuse, depending on what we choose in this node. I called this node color diffuse, that is, we choose a color in the diffuse, or do not choose the color of the diffuse, that is, either false, true or false. By default, we don't have a tick, that is, we have a default fall. And the false is our branch related to textures. We go to the very end of this branch here, and we see here a lerp that mixes two textures. These two textures that are translated into a parameter as we see 2D pairs written. That is, we can change them in the instance material. According to Fresnel. He mixes them according to Fresnel, just as we mixed glass. Again, this design works for me, if we mix, if we kind of want to use mixing, that is, a Fresnel mix. We kind of have such a switcher, like a toggle switch. By default, it is disabled, so we use just a texture by default. If we need not just to make a texture, but to mix a dark, and light texture, then we will select in the instance. In the parameters of the Fresnel mix true, that is, we will check the box. Then we will be able to mix the two textures. Well, here is a note and a multiplay. It is created by pressing the M key and the left mouse button. We mix this whole construction with the color. The color, as I said, is created on the 3 key. With the left mouse button, we create a node. This way we can mix the texture. For example, here we see now on the ball, whatever color it puts, it mixes with the texture of this one. So on what else can we do here? We can change the contrast through the contrast chip node. The contrast chip is created with the right button. Just enter the same chip contrast, or just contrast can be driven. There is a contrast chip and a contrast chip. We need a contrast chip since we will have a color texture, so we need a contrast. And we connect contrast to the channel. As I said, you can connect just by right-clicking the promotion parameter, and this contrast node will be created automatically. So further, we have desaturation parameters. We can change the saturation. Just the right button, looking for desaturation. Here it is Saturn. Such a button is created, we connect it to the chain. Here we can also right-click function, promotion and parameter to create a parameter and enter, for example, the article race, somehow as it is more convenient for you. This parameter will be visible in the instance. So here the hyphen brightness is the brightness of the material. We also connect this node via multiplay to change the brightness. For example, now I put 5, then it becomes brighter. Here. If I set it to 0, it will turn black. By default, there is 1, that is, it is the true color, brightness of the material. So there's a reflex here. The reflex is also a choice. Here you can choose the reflex of the text, that is, we have a texture or a color. Just such a design. So, metallicity is if we make metal. By default, it is 0, that is, by default it is not a metal object, but rather not a metal material. Therefore, it costs 0. Next, we have windows with this glossiness, that is, roughness. By default, the glossiness of the text is disabled, that is, we control just the roughness through a numeric value. Or we can enable glossing control via texture in the instance. I have a slightly complicated system, well, not really complicated, but a little complicated by the fact that two textures are mixed, or rather two colors are mixed according to texture. We can, for example, add some kind of dirt card and control its black and white color in such a way to weaken or strengthen it. So is the normal map. The normal map is also a little complicated. Here comes the choice. We choose to turn on or off the normal. Let's say we need a normal or not in the material. For example, if I don't need a normal, it seems to be disabled by default. Yes, there is no tick, that is, it means that a fall is triggered. Here we have just a color connected. We press the 3 key, a node like this is created, and here we set 1 in blue, and 0 in R and G. All we get is this blue color, and we just connect it to the falls. In other words, This means that there will be no normal, it will not work out. If we check the box at the Institute, turn on normal and enable, that is, it will turn on. Then we will have the opportunity to choose the normal map, that is, whether we will use the normal map. If we have a map, here's a blue map for normal, then we can put it on true, that is, turn it on with a tick. By default it is enabled, use this texture, or if we don't have it. We have a 3D Max, just some kind of black and white texture, or if we want to use a hyphen texture. Then we use the node normal from Hey Map. That is, we enter in the search with the right button, open the context menu, and enter the normal ROM HIM. Yes, here's the normal from HIM. We are creating such a node. The first channel we connect to such a node is the text effect parameter. It can be created in principle simply. Right-click on the first parameter, here we select the promotion parameter. We are creating a node like this. Here we are for this material, just for a template, we can connect some texture here. Just select a texture in the content browser and click on the arrow. That is, here we connect the texture and convert, it will be right-click convert to parameter. Then, the normal map intensity. Here we connect the parameter. As I said, right-click the parameter. Such a parameter node is created here. With it, you can change how much the texture will be squeezed out. And the normal map offset HIM set cannot be changed or set as I have. This offset is normal, in principle it is rarely needed. Then coordinate. Coordinate, here we connect the same bundle that we saw in the diffuse. This is the bundle that controls the UV, there is displacement, talling, turns. That's it. So in principle, this is such a complex material. If you figure it out once, make up such a material, then it can be used on all objects. For example, I'm going to try to show you now. For example, this object here, or this stone wall here. I open it and here I have that here are the contrast parameters, so that I change them here, brightness. We can change the texture, Fresnel mix, but if we turn it on, we have a choice, or rather texture mixing, as I said here. We insert two textures. I'm turning it off now. In order to change the parameter somehow at all, we need to turn it on first, then change it. In principle, this is how we set up materials. I think it's understandable. So, about then the fireplace. The fireplace is our video material. Here we don't use particles in the fix, here we use just a texture, a media texture. Now I'm going to show you how it works. So, I have this texture. I'm going to open everything now. Yes, that's the texture. We throw the texture into the content browser. We have it created as a media source file. Here is such a file we are creating. When we open it, here we see a groove file, that is, we indicate here the path where the MP4 file is located. The video should be in the format of MP4, the bitrate, in my opinion, is up to 4000. I usually put about a bitrate of up to 4000 works fine in Unreal. Here we need a media player, an electric player. It will need to be added via plugins. It is located in the settings plugins. Here we enter the electro in the search and find the electric player. I didn't put all these ticks here, they are set automatically. Just tick the electric player and that's it. Most likely, Unreal will ask to restart no. You will need to click restart no and restart the project. Then let's say, this media source, which we added MP4, is on fire here in Windows Electro. This is very important to do, because then when rendering in a sequence in the camera, we will have a bad video rendering there. That is, it will either twitch or hang somehow. Therefore, we definitely set up an electric player. Next, we need to create a media player material. So, I'll probably try it now. It's better to show it like this. Now I'm going to see where I have this video. So, here's my video. We transfer the video file is MP4. Let's say I transfer it here, then right-click, or rather open the media file first. Here I will immediately set the electro, save. Then I right-click, here we also select the media player section. Then he asks us to add a media texture. We click like this, click on this tick, click OK. Then we call the media player. I usually call it as MP abbreviation. There, let's say in fireplace. Great, and that's how the texture was created right away. I will also conveniently name the texture for myself. So mount, that is, the material of the text. Here is the material text. I put the autoclayer. Save. Let's check. Open the media player. Check this video now, but it's called Fi 3. Here it starts. We put a magnifying glass here so that this video does not stop here. Click Save, close. Now we need to create the material. Right-click on the media texture and select the upper crate material. Here let's call it that. Let's just call M the material. Now, if I try to launch it in the media player now, for example here, we should have the material working in principle. Now, by the way, I have just opened the material, it needs to be adjusted. Here I will choose an emissive, disconnect it from the base color, let it be an emissive, that is, it will be a little like. There will be a glowing material itself, and now this material can be applied to the object. Well, that is, there is a plane here that simulates fire. Usually, if you rock or have seen fireplaces, 3D models of fireplaces, there are polygons like with a texture that simulates fire. Let's say I'm going to make a shape plane for an example. We are trying to apply the material on it now. So we see that we have a fireplace running. Okay, but there's one problem here. Here we see a black background. So that it does not exist, so that there is no black background, we go into the material and here in the material. I will set the mask mode, and connect the texture to the mouth of the mask. Now save. It's like an object has disappeared, but it's not gone, the mask just works. We start the media player, I'll try to start it again now, and that's it, in principle, the fire works. That's how the fireplace works. This way you can make a fireplace. The same thing happens with the TV, that is, there is simply no need to do a mask drop here. We just connect it to the issue, for example, or you can connect it to base color. So, fire. It's reflected like that, because it's not running. Now I'm going to try to run it and show you how it will work. In general, this should not be. I'll take a look. It's not reflected in the fireplace. It reflects fake light. That's because the fireplace has just lit up, and the display. Yes, this is displayed by plane. It can be removed from reflections. It is done in principle very simply. This is such a fake light, as if it is created from a fireplace. Here it turns out that you work as artists, you see how your stage will look better. If this kind of nonsense happened, you need to remove this player from the reflection. We will write off the specular scale in the tool search. The scale can be set to 0. That's it, it won't be reflected. But in this case, we lose the reflection here. That is, there is something to put up with. Let's say we put 05 back now. So, I'll try it now. Here it is possible to remove the tick of the rate rating reflections here. We enter the ray in the tools at the rectangle, find the right reflection rating, turn off the check mark. That's it, you can also solve the problem. So, let's do a quick sequence. Let's say I'm in a cell right now. The camera is created through a burger. Sane camera actor is automatically created from the angle from which you created it. So, I'm going to find her from the camera now, she's in my outliner. It seems this. With the right button of the pile, then we sort of inhabit it and can fly. I'll try to recreate it. Burger, sane camera, actor right-click pilot, this is my 11th camera. I put it as I need it. Let's say she's going to fly up like this. And let's light the fireplace. I'm going to create a sequence now. Right-click to create a sequence in the section. So, now I'm going to find a section. Cinematics level sequence section. Let's say I call it a sequence. Sequence, let there be sequence 1. Open the sequence, move the camera here. So, and we have the keys here, you can set the keys. Before you set up the motion animation now, here I'll show you what else you can set up. And here we are setting up a RAID frame. Now the default is 30 FPS. Render by default, there is a firecracker 3 dots. By default, we set the render movie queue. Basically, if we put a render queue, if I didn't say it, we need to add it, we click Settings, Plugins, and enter the movie render queue in the search. We are writing a movie render. We find the UV render queue, check the box here. Most likely, you will need to restart the engine. Restart, and we will have it installed. You can run it through Windows Cinematics. So, Windows Cinematics with movie render queue. Here is such a window. Either from here, that is, when we created a sequence, through a camera into the sequence, click on the firecracker. We immediately open the Ender Queue Mover with the added sequence. So, let's set up the movement now. Fast movement through the frames, here I put 0. To fix the position, I need to put a key in the transform. Here we have this section of the transform. Put a tick here, or rather click on the circle, then we will fix 10, Y, Z, rotation, location, scale all together. If we need something specific, we open the arrows and put the ball there, fix the axis that we need, but if there is such a need. So, now I'm putting up a common ball, that is, a common key. Let's put the last frame here. What's the last frame here? 150th. And let's get a little closer. For example, like this. We put 5 balls on the space bar. I'll reproduce it now. Somehow it turns out to accelerate and slow down. To avoid this, so that it moves linearly, we can select all the keys that we need to translate into linear motion. And click on the 4. Now I'll try again. Now it's moving linearly. It looks much better this way. Sometimes you can use a smooth acceleration of deceleration, but in general, it's generally better for cameras to move linearly. And now let's figure out how to turn on the fireplace, for example. The fireplace, in order for it to render properly, we need to add it here, right into the sequence. Now I'm going to find the sequence, or rather I'm going to find the fireplace that I have here. Here I have it. And this media source, which I was talking about, which specifies the path to the MP file, I transfer to the media player. Its beginning is set on this scale here. I'm setting it to 0 now, like this. Firmware we will install, that's where he will play. That's from what frame? Let's say now from this frame, you can from any other frame, but now he will not play, as we even see it now here in uport. In order for it to play, we need to right-click on this video, and set the texture in Properties Media. You can select it in the search, you can click here on the media texture. Right-click Properties and click on the arrow next to the media texture. And now we have animation playing here. Even here it is possible to reproduce it. Now I'm pressing the space bar. We will have the same thing on the render. And in this case, we won't have the animation twitching, it won't be too accelerated, and it won't be too slow. It will render correctly. It is not necessary to compress this video scale here, to shift it in any way, that is, as it is, so it is. In any case, it will be rendered exactly what is up to this red face, and that's how far we get these cameras. How much it occupies the scale. For example, here she is now on the 150th frame. That's it, it won't render further. So, we've sorted this out, now let's set up the render. I'll show you how to run the render here. We open the movie render queue through a firecracker. Automatically, this sequence, in which we have been working, is added to the movie render queue. Before that, I would have saved it better. Save and only then on the firecracker. We can click on the plus render here and add some other sequence that we have previously configured. In other words, we can configure all the sequences and then add them here and put them on the render. Everything in this list will be rendered. What we don't need to render, we disable. So, we have rendered the sequence according to the standard path. In principle, the fire is well rendered, there are no pauses. You can check it out. I'll try to run it in Deja Vu. I transfer the sequence and look. Yes, that is, there are no jerks, pauses in the animation. In order not to make noise, you already need to set up anti-aliasing on the Christmas tree. I had a lot of noise there right now because I exposed the anti-aliasing too much. I put up too little, I should have put at least, probably, 4 on. 4 by 8, probably put. We have rendered this piece of animation sequence rendered now. I think, in principle, it is clear, yes, how to render the animation of fire. The TV is rendered according to the same scheme. Video media source is also added, media texture is adjusted. If we render from blueprints, run that is in the project, then most likely we will have the animation rendered incorrectly. So, and how is the animation gluing done in the end? Gluing is done mainly by DaVinci. Opening DaVinci. I already have sticksequences, so as not to wait, now I'm going to show you on ready-made sequences how to do the gluing correctly. How in principle it can be done, animation. Click New Project, here you can call the project something. Let it be new. Here then, first of all we make settings in the lower right corner, we set the settings, what do we have? Sequence, let's say I have a resolution of 4K, 3840 by 2160. We put the frames here. A second, again, how many sequences do we have? Well, here in principle, it is not necessary to change, but I put, let's say, 4K, 60 frames. Safe. Then here in the first point of the media, we set the sequence to 3 points so that the sequence is normally read. So, now I'm going to open the sequences that I have prepared here. So here, we select all the sequences and transfer them just here. So I'll change the look. That's how we open the sequences. You can select all of them and transfer them here to timeline. A timeline is automatically created. Now we will need to properly glue these videos, or rather these sequences. So I had a musical accompaniment here somewhere. I'm going to find him now. So here we just look at the music, we select at what points it is possible to make a transition. If we want to make some kind of transition, let's say in a video transition, we have video transitions. We have several transitions here, as we can observe if we swipe the mouse over them. Let's say a blur and some other transitions here. Well, often they are not used at all. Here transitions are used only dimming, or let's say if one picture turns into another picture. And, as you understand, in order for the transition to work, you need some kind of stock of frames. That is, if I pull out the dimensions now, that's how they are, yes. I have sequences of 600 frames going on for 10 seconds. It turns out that if I try to make some kind of transition, then I will not be able to do it, because there is no stock of frames. We need to squeeze them like this, then close them, and then we can make the transition. Here it is. It's just that if you want to make transitions, then it's worth considering. Transitions are usually made at such moments where there are some bursts, or well, how do you think that the transition will look better here? If you want, for example, to make as it were vertical frames, for example. Now I'm going to choose the bottom one, and now I've moved the sequence up, put the second one above it. Let's say I remove the bottom one, remove the crop. Now the crop. Let's say I'm pruning. So, the upper one is bothering me a little now, I'm cutting it with a crop. Then through the transform, I remove the scrolls here, I transfer this frame to the left side. Then I transfer to the scale already where the upper one is, we have the upper sequence. I do the same with dill. For example, something like this. I cut it, turn off the crop, and see what happens. That is, one. First one sequence appeared, and then the second one followed it. You can make such an easy transition. Here there are such keys, we pull them up, they seem to create a smooth appearance, and a smooth attenuation. Two. So, in order to reset this crop, which we have just done, I select a sequence, and there is a cropping here. So we cut the crop left, just click on the arrow and reset. The same thing for another sequence, click on the arrow, crop left, crop right, and that's it, we get it not installed. The only one here is this sequence, shifted here to the transform, we put the position, click on the arrow and reset it to. In order to have this panel at all, we must have an inspector enabled. We turn on the inspector and we have this panel. In this project, you can still make the camera shake. I didn't do it, but you can do it, for example, here in the angle with GIFs. To do this, we have a shake camera. He seems to be in OPA and fix. The camera shake should be. You can click on the magnifying glass here and find the camera like this. Here is the open and fix camera shake. In order not to search for it all the time, in principle, you can click on the arrow, or rather on the asterisk next to it. It is added to favorites. This is where the shake camera is added to our favorites list. I have something wrong now. We simply transfer this camera shake to the sequence on which we need to make the camera shake. And now we will reproduce it. We will see how it works. Now we are shaking very much. To fix it, we go into the effects, in the inspector again. We were in the video, now in the effects, open and fix, camera shake. Here we can turn it on, off, or delete it if we don't need it. In the motion scale, how much, as it were, how strong will be, as it were, a surge of these swings. How far, that is, the camera will move away in different directions. So then it's our speed that sleeps. Let's reduce the speed a little. Here I'll reduce the scale a little. More. So you can even reduce it. So he sleeps a little too. We'll put it somewhere like this. Here it is necessary to select the optimal values, then we do not touch the motion blur in principle. What other parameters are interesting here? In principle, you can twist different parameters, see how they work. So, the radius. Yeah. So, let's say we set up a shake camera on some sequence, and to copy it, we can click on the Ctrl+C as we copy. Next, select the sequence that we need and click on Alt-V, not Ctrl+B, but Alt-B. This window opens. Here we select in Plugins on Plugins app. Now we have effects in this sequence, too. Here's the camera shake. So, we can transfer this camera shake to other sequences as well, if we need to. Also select, you can even select several, press Alt-B, remove plugins, apply. If we don't need this camera shake, click on the trash can and delete it. Basically, that's all it takes to make an animation, that's enough. I don't think I missed anything on DaVinci.